Like the lifesaver here for my strategy approval was Sandeep sir, because मैंने intuition से सवाल करे थे 10 में से 3 हुए थे. So I realized after the fact that even though I had scored like a good percentile in IEO in my 10th, well, it doesn't convert at all when it comes to like a paper like GMAT. So irrespective of how much ego I would have built up, yeah, I've been writing for a while. I wrote on LinkedIn as well. I have like this vanity metric. It doesn't matter at the end of the day because what the answer is what it is. See, one thing I realized, the couple things I was doing wrong. First thing was it was direction. Even I think in the post that we shared as well. One thing as I said later was that I think thought of it as पढ़ लिया लिख लिया but apply करना भूल गए. But it was also in the week that if I've learned prime, if I've learned octave, I read it as ki I've written it down. I've written it down a couple of times. I've revised it a couple of times as well. But when it comes down to applying it in a framework, that was where I was kind of going off the rails.
So again, congratulations again, Ayush. 740 on your GMAT with the with the breakup of quant 49 and a verbal 42, and you gave the exam quite some time ago. In the month of August, yes. So
Right.
thank you for making some time. We're just going to be taking you through the GMAT journey. It's been some time. I hope you remember. So please tell us the time that you initially started and how did it all come through? What was your goal when you wanted to start, when you initially took a step to prepare for GMAT?
Right.
Please walk us through the time that you, the entire flow.
Right. So essentially, taking the GMAT was not like a one-off thing for me. I've been planning, like in order to get like my education, I'm planning to get a paper, like, figuring out what my research should look like, what my undergrad GPA should look like for a while, ever since I stepped on campus. So my first step again went down to preparing for the GMAT again, which came down about at the end of my second year. Parallelly, I was going to be doing work of my summer school in private equity. साथ साथ में I have to work for my undergrad education as well, and I figured out that GMAT is something I have to give before I take a bigger deal. So that's when I figured out that first of all, GMAT score is also a very big consideration when it comes to not only deferred MBAs but other masters as well. So I thought first things first, I have to make sure that my red flag in my application is not my GMAT score. So
Right.
first things first, I have to be like prioritization. I have to figure out the first thing I have to conquer has to be my GMAT. So naturally, I started headhunting कि कहाँ जाके कहाँ से पढ़ूं. That was a very arduous process. So I went to a lot of places, hit a lot of places, but the thing was I was finding that one little spark that would get me to get enrolled in a course. I found that finally after top 1% because I've had a couple of I've enrolled in coachings before as well, not for GMAT but for my undergrad prep. I gave IPMAT, I gave JE as well. So I had a couple of experiences where I felt like kuch cheezein thi where it felt I lacked a little. So I was a little hesitant at first, but the best part was that when I connected with Miss Priyansha also, she didn't try to like sell anything in the beginning. She told me that there's a portal, go give like an initial questions, and then we'll see what we can do about that. And I absolutely bombed that that questionnaire. I did not do very well. I think maybe 3, maybe 4 questions at max. And I was expecting like कि 10 सवाल है तो at least 5 तक हो जाने चाहिए so that I end in a good position. I
Right.
did maximum 3, maybe 4 correct, and I didn't even know where I went wrong. That was the bigger issue. So
Right.
that's when my connect journey with top 1% started, because Ms. Priyansha then started telling me that this is what we have to do. And in that logic, because you're doing that, the medium to do that could be top 1%. And that's how I started to enroll with the courses.
See, achieving a GMAT 740, it's itself an impeccable feat that you have done. But more importantly, to stay focused, that's the most driving force, to be able to identify that, GMAT is your red flag in your application, and overall picturing yourself that, you're going to be getting an admit here and this is what you want. And GMAT can really boost your path to that, right? That's a fantastic feat, because that's the starting point. I think if anyone is hearing you, or if you want to tell this to your friends, this is one of the factors that keeps them determined, because it's not an easy path throughout. You mentioned in your post also it took quite some time because maybe you were not at it throughout, right? So while you were preparing for GMAT in a very full-fledged form, what would you just say, what were your challenges? Was it quant, was it verbal, and how did you overcome these with the help of the material and Sandeep sir sessions?
Right. Like first things first, like the thing was that I did take a lot of time to get that as well. Thankfully, one thing I realized, the couple things I was doing wrong. First things was it was direction. Even I think in the post that we shared as well, one thing as I said later was that I think thought of it as पढ़ लिया लिख लिया but apply करना भूल गए. But it was also in the week that if I've learned prime, if I've learned octave, I read it as ki I've written it down, I've written it down a couple of times, I've revised it a couple of times as well. But when it comes down to applying it in a framework, that was where I was kind of going off the rails. So I was looking at it in a very isolated silo wherein I have studied differently, I will apply differently, but that wasn't something that would help me in any way. So that was one thing I really realized, the direction was something I was lacking. And secondly, after a couple of strategy calls as well, Mr. Alin Dhoti as well will help me a lot in this. And he helped me, to engage with the material in a better format. So the 700 800 PDF, I did that like diligently completely, but I also figured out कि ये नहीं हो रहा है तो वो circle करके already रख दिए. So I had subsections of 700 to 800 in my computer by step,
Wow.
wherein my written notebook was actually two notebooks because सामने से I'm doing the sums on the video and based on Sandeep's sessions, and पीछे was basically the questions I got wrong. I wrote all of them again and I wrote only the options there, and I just said कि अगर ये नहीं आ रहा है तो refer to the front page से fourth page or fifth page. So I kind of made my own little textbook to figure out where I'm going wrong, because one part of it was also to get me engaged in the process also. I couldn't look at it as 50 sawal karna and then I'm done for the day. I also had to look at it as if I'm doing 50, I've gotten 10 wrong, I have to refer that back to my index, and those index I'll go back to if I'm getting it right or correct. So quant was, I would say, a little of a sore spot for me because I had to figure out all that given JE and ICMAT as well. And undergrad, maybe I'm studying a lot of math. It was just that question को interpret करना and getting it in a framework where you have to not only use the correct formula, but at the same time apply correct logic as well. Because a simple distinction between applying simple interest and compound interest could be the difference between like a correct and an incorrect solution. And one more important thing that actually Alan sir also helped me out with was like an exit strategy, like the 2.5 minute portion that even Sandeep sir puts out in the PDF and the Excel as well. That one thing I realized that I wasn't doing that well, because मुझे था कि पहले 10 सवाल are your make or break as well in your point, कि at least you have to get all of them correct. So I put so much time there that I wasn't able to get enough questions के लिए time in the end of my prep as well. So my first ESR that he helped me analyze, he said, okay, this is good because the first quarter you have about 70% correct, but it's a drastic drop after that. And that actually helped me realize that it was a timeline issue that I was also facing. So it was like a mix of getting portals, my material, and my direction.
So the pacing chart that you got in the strategy phase kind of helped you.
Right.
But so this was quant. In verbal, did you have
Right.
anything specific? Because in quant you have, a
Right.
logical way, a certain strategy, a certain formulas.
Right.
Even with verbal, if not for Sandeep, right? You would
Right.
have gone with an intuition or maybe another way. With
Right.
Sandeep's strategy, how does it, come around for you? Was it very logical? Was it very mathematical? What would you have to say?
Actually, like the lifesaver here for my strategy approval was Sandeep sir, because मैंने intuition से सवाल करे थे 10 में से 3 हुए थे. So I realized after the fact that even though I had scored like a good percentile in IEO in my 10th, well, it doesn't convert at all when it comes to like a paper like GMAT. So irrespective of how much ego I would have built up, I've been writing for a while. I wrote on LinkedIn as well. I have like this vanity metric. It doesn't matter at the end of the day because what the answer is what it is. So when it comes to SC, RC, and CR, which is basically, I relied a lot on not only these videos, but most importantly, the marathons. I did all of the videos, I think even twice for a couple of them, for a good number of them. But the marathons was something I felt like, ये कर दिया तो उसमें सिर्फ सवाल solve करने होंगे. I already know the framework, why not just apply it myself and do it? But the constant feedback of you did it wrong and exactly what you did wrong made you not do a 3-2 slides. It got you an ulta 2-3 slides. So instead of finding out what the correct answer could have been, I didn't even use stuff like like an extreme word that could have easily been eliminated the entire option. मैं उस पे अटक गया बोलने के लिए कि this could be my correct answer. So that's what I kind of stuck with. So for RC itself, I first was his material, then was his lectures, then was marathon as well. I did a little bit of LSAT, but that was for my own edification because I realized that if my score is not doing well and I've exhausted the material, I still need to do more things in order to ensure मेरे सही answers आ रहे हैं. Because repetitive questions doesn't really help me after the end of the day. Because if I remember कि अगर ये Lepidoptera का passage है उसमें मेरा ABC type answers आ रहे हैं, and if I remember the passage after that, I solve the question again. I'm not using a brain. I'm just using the stored memory of the questions I have.
Right.
So I started going into LSAT a little bit more after that because it was a heftier side of the passage for me. So if I would score about 70, 80, 90% accuracy in the normal OG, I would score a little less than that in the portal marks. I would score a little less than that on LSAT as well. So I would also realize that वो splice मेरे पास है, but at the same time also need to realize that difficulty level भी
You have to
progressively
take
change
into
हो रहा है.
accountability. Yes.
Right. So I had to ensure that not only is that RC is a tricky concept, it's like a lengthier concept for me as well. Because although other questions I have an exit strategy for 2.5, passes itself could take me 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes to read as well. Because understanding is more important than it comes.
This
So
this
yeah,
reminds me of one thing that Sandeep sir usually says, and he tells it almost in all the classes. It's not really important. It's you will never be right about a passage 100% of the time. You should be 100% of the time. You should be confident of the options that are wrong. That's more important. And then you arrive at the right option. You don't really go with 100% conviction that this is the right answer, but the other way around. I think that came out very well through your preparation. So going a little forward on the test day, because then it's quite a lot of sitting together in 3 hours, quite stressful. How did it all span out in terms of the timeline, in terms of you getting that feeling that, hey, I'm doing it right, and in addition to that, any question that seemed out of place because you've did the material more than that is asked for, like the most mandatory set is there, then in addition to it, to improve sir is given LSAT and all that, right? Any question in the exam that seemed out of place, or wow, I've never seen this before? Any such moments, if you recall, 2 months ago?
Oh, I don't think that was like a moment where I felt like this was something I haven't looked at. The question type is something that I obviously knew, but the nuances itself, I could say that obviously this has changed a little bit, but the broad pattern was mostly the same. So even on the D day, I was realizing that I know the type of pattern that the question is asking, so I could base it on that.
But you were okay with the time and the accuracy, nothing.
Right. Yeah. So at least when it comes to pacing, I have given basically 25, 30 mocks. Only direction change was they were more of sectional tests now. I was realized that if I am doing horribly at boldface itself, I need to do more CR sectional tests. So it became less of 3 hour sittings wherein I could say ki 3 hours I'll pace myself, and I could actually pinpoint and break my ego and feel like this is exactly what I'm doing wrong. I have to do CR more and I have to give more mocks to break a little bit of my ego down and a little bit of the self-respect down to be like, cool, I'm doing this wrong. I have to do more questions in this fashion as well. So that helped me pace myself better, but also do more volume. So on the D day, I had enough practice when it comes to mocks that I could be like, I'm the pacing itself. I don't need to be too worried about how well I'm doing. I just need to know that in this specified limit of time, I need to have 10 more that I have to do. So just ensure that you do it in this specified 2.5, 3 minute strategy that we have.
So, clearly, right? I mean, you have put yourself in those, being in that mock, and on the test day, there is no such surprise element. So I think that would be a great factor for anybody who's listening to take away. More importantly, overall, with regard to doubts, support, you mentioned about Alan, right? How did that experience help you to get the score that you have right now?
Okay. I think I thought of myself as a very nagging person when it came to health, because I would repeatedly ask Ms. Priyanshu also, and I would repeatedly ask that this is not something I'm not getting. How many times would I have to email? What I need to do? I do it a lot of voluminous ways. I would not suggest everyone to do that, but what actually did help me was after my 690 attempt, I just had to schedule one call with a strategy consultant. I had to basically he asked me for my ESR. So after that was when he sat me down and told me that this is exactly where you're going wrong. And this is why we need to do differently. Like I said, even in the quant portion, the 4 quarters were vastly different than what they should have been. So when it came to strategy and it came to doubts, I did as many, I sent as many as I wanted to, but at the same time, I realized it had to be very clear, crisp, and real doubts, and not just something I wanted to, just send it for the heck of it. So I need to realize that I took it a little bit on my ego. I need to send the least amount of doubts I can, because they need to be original and pure doubts, which I need to know if there's a concept clarity question. And it can't just be a framework issue that I say that, this should be or this should be this, but probably in the direction of, is my direction correct or wrong? Should I have used prime in the correct way, or should I have used focused on the M or the E for that fact? So this is the kind of figure out that I felt like I should give in the mailing portion. But when it came to strategy, I had, I think, 2, maybe 3 calls that I had. One was a group call, which I kind of was sitting for a GMAT club session with a couple of ad comms later, which I left, and I was like, no, this is more important. I had to come and sit with Mr. Lavoti as well. And he actually was really helpful in clearing a lot of doubts for me. because it was a very stressful period. I just told us 690. I still had to sit for AdCom sessions and be like, maybe not, maybe get in, may not get in. So I had to, I had to set my priorities straight, come back, to ground one and restart building from scratch.
It's very inspiring, because these are the few things to set priorities and to be able to realize that with, in the background, so many things that is going on. It's let's say it's more commendable in your case, Ish. Salute to that. So if you now look back, I mean, it's been some time again, I'm just saying, what is that one thing that you would have done differently to in your entire preparation, or you've done it all, you would say?
Right. I wouldn't say that I did it. I did it all. I still would, if I would find some principles that I would have based down to the first principles and then done it better. First thing would be direction, most important, because I felt like my efforts were in volume, which were great, but they were dispersed in a lot of directions. I would much rather have done something which would be sitting and in excruciating detail, sit with one single subject for 6 hours. And then if I'm getting extremely bored, only doing two, and then figuring out if I'm bored with this, let's do this. If I'm bored with this, let's come back to this. Rather than doing, everything in one day and trying to figure out what to do from day one itself. Although that was something that was kind of suggested as well at the same time, but the plan also clearly mentioned that there's a clear sequence of videos you have to go through. There's a pre-work, there's a post-work. But the direction, the logic behind that was actually something I needed to understand more importantly before I plotted my video. So
Because
once I did that, yeah, sorry.
that's what Sandeep has culminated, like 25 years,
Right.
and he's known every student. And how can you get the maximum impact from doing every session? And that's why he's really planned that study plan so
Right.
thoroughly. If you did follow, probably that
Right.
100% result, right? Yeah, I would say.
Right. Actually, what I did was that I kind of added my own little nuance to it because I realized that they would give me a plan, it wouldn't give me the date to do it well. So he left that up to us to also realize. So what I did was I am in my natural habitat in my dorm right now. What I used to do is there's a chart paper right here with calendar stuff on it. So essentially, I made down my date to August 29th. So T minus 11 weeks, 12 weeks, 13 weeks, and
Wow.
I would plot it back onto my D day, my current day as well, and I would essentially figure out if 770 was what I was aiming for. That actually was a little off what I realized. If I'm aiming for 770 or 3 weeks before that, I need to come closer to a 740. 3 weeks so that I need to come to a 710. So that was, although not necessarily something I would reach, but as a north star for me, that's what I was planning for. So along the lines of not that this is a hard and fast rule that this is exactly what I have to do, but a north star for me to figure out that this direction, this ballpark is what I have to hit by the time I'm done. Because if I had a 690 when I started, I wasn't considering it a 690 when I started preparing. I would consider it back from zero, rewatch all the videos from scratch, even look at a couple of basics videos because that was a very a mind-shattering moment for me when the ESR came out. So when that's the one point where I felt like, okay, I have to start from scratch. I even wrote in the top of my book, like, get over your ego, start writing all over again, start from scratch all the bottom, and then that's when I figured out that I have to backtrack what I need to do all the way to my current date, and I'm still following that format, even though my GMAT is done. I'm doing it for other things now.
So I have a feeling that for this next segment of the question, you will have a lot of advices to give. So this is where I would say for students, maybe you would refer, or anybody who would watch your journey, right? What is that few things that you would say that you must do in your preparation that would certainly get you the score, and what is that you must
Right.
not, the do's and the don'ts? I would just rather say one, but in your case, I have the feeling that you have some more do's to do and don'ts to do. Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to be as concise as I can with this because I think I've given a lot of them out before also. One thing was the calendar that I feel. More importantly were the videos, and most importantly the marathon sessions. I felt like that played a bigger role for me than just concept clarity, because applying was a bigger deal that I wanted to grapple with. So there was calendar, there's the usual videos, and there's the RC videos, and there are the 7 or 8 videos. I feel like that was more than enough for me to not only plan out what I wanted to, but have the volume and the time to put it in. So that was something I would be absolutely fine with doing. But I think in one of the don'ts, I would probably say that just like Sandeep sir also said, it's like a 3 hour stretch you have to sit for at a time. Sitting for one along the day won't really help, because that's like a compounding fact that takes place. So for me as well, even on the D day, what I did actually was after my quant was done, we have an 8 minute break. I was freaking out because I thought quant may have gone somewhat wrong. Actually, that was reflected in the ESR as well. I could have gotten a 50, could have gotten a 51. I must have messed up somewhere. But that was the point where I had to recollect and be like, I have to realize that I need to figure out to make this my best attempt. sat down, meditated basically for 8 minutes, just trying to calm myself, correct myself. Went there, basically, I think 3 seconds late, the panic came back again slightly, but I was able to calm all of it down and then sat for my verbal. And actually, the verbal came out much better than I was expecting it to at the same time. So one of the don'ts would actually be not to absolutely panic when one session goes down, because it's not like a small battle; it's an entire war you have to fight. There are more than 2 sections. You even have to read IR and AW after that, even if you have the nerves built up. So even after my verbal was done, I was not absolutely sure that paper went well, but I still had to sit down and collect myself and be like, okay, now for the next state, I have to first do AW and then I have to do IR as well, or the other way around as well. So I have to figure that out. So that would be my entire.
That's phenomenal. So my last question is, you have now the score, you also have been building your profile. Where do you see yourself next? When are you applying? What schools are you targeting? Do you have that in mind, or have you already applied?
Okay, so I signed up with Autry sir sometime right after my score actually. The first people I texted were Ms. Priyansha, Autry sir, Ranjika ma'am, and I told them that thankfully his score is now done, because there was one of the AdCom event that Top Head was a part of at Hyderabad itself, and I had the privilege to meet Sandeep sir there itself. So a couple of admissions committee, I still have their cards in my room. I also started targeting them as well. That if this is the school I need to figure out, this is the deadline, this is what I need to do. These are the core values that they really appreciate as well. I need to figure out how I can connect myself with the schools that I wanted to, and actually figure out if I'm a fit for them and they're a fit for me as well. So with Autry sir, I started with applying to a couple of schools, a couple of DEFOD and a couple of MIMs as well. I wanted to diversify my portfolio because DEFOD has a notoriously low acceptance rates. So I'm kind of diversifying my field and kind of figuring out whatever DEFOD I can apply right now, whatever MIMs I can apply right now. So that's what my strategy has been with at least applying to schools.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing in. Since you're a part of the family right now in the top 1%, I am sure that I'll be hearing more in terms of the admit, in terms of whatever that's going on, and we'll keep this communication going. Thank you so much for sharing this journey with us, with me and Priyansha. Thank you, Priyansha, for joining in, and all the very best, Ayush. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am.